Hey guys, it's Mr. Little here. I am going to help you out with one of your assignments here in World Studies. Right now you are seeing Mr. Mager and Miss Pelega's their agenda for Monday. And basically, if you're looking at it number 2, it looks like you guys have already started on Friday of last week. I am jumping down to number 3 here, where it says you need to read this article and then you need to fill out this comparison table. So if I'm looking at this table, I just have a compare and contrast. So we're looking for government, economy, education, social structure for the two city-states, Athens and Sparta. Okay? So this is what we are looking at. I am not going to fill this out, but I am going to read and highlight what you should put in this. So if you just follow along, this should be pretty easy going. So this is the article right in front of me, and it is Life in Two City-States, Athens and Sparta. Remember, we are filling out 2 columns. We're looking for the first, whether they're talking about Athens or Sparta. So this is an introduction. I am not going to read it. Feel free to if you want to. I am using a strategy where I am going to look for my answers. So I am looking at the titles, comparing the two city-states. This is where they're just talking a little bit about it. But now look, 27.3, Athenian government. And that happens to be one of the sections we need. So right now we are in Athens. In the box, we're going to be filling out the box that deals with their government. So I am going to highlight some points that I think you should have for this, and we're going to move on. So as you've learned in the last chapter, Athens has become a democracy around 500. So Athens is, Athens is a democracy. So I am going to highlight this. And that would be one thing I would put in our box. As I continue to read, every citizen could take part in the city's government. Every citizen can take part in the government. A group called the Council of 500 met every day. Each year, the names of all citizens 30 years of age and older were collected, and 500 of those names were chosen. The council ran the day-to-day business. So, this kind of sounds like a system of government that we have. And then proposed laws had to be approved by a much larger group called the Assembly. So in this box, I would have, it is a democracy. And that only free men could be citizens. Every citizen could take part in the government, and the council ran the day-to-day business. And then there was also an organization called the Assembly, who also created the laws. That's all you need in that box. All right, we're moving on. You can read the rest, but we have enough to fill that box. Now I'm moving down. Oh, look at that. The next box we need to fill out, the economy. All right. So on the economy, you see my cursor where you can highlight. We are going to go the Athenian, come on. An important part of life in any community is its economy. The economy is the way the community or the region organizes and manufactures and the exchange of money, food, and products. The Athenian economy was based on trade. So, based on trade. That's a big one. Put in that box. That might actually be the biggest thing to put in that box. The land around Athens did not provide enough food for all the city's people, but Athens was near the sea. That's key. They were near the ocean, and they had a good harbor, so the Athenians traded. So they traded. and they exchanged goods. So basically in this box, I would say they were based on trade. They lived near the oceans. They traded with other city-states. And let's see. Oh, and then down here, like most city-states, Athens developed its own coins to make trade easier. That's key. So they created their own currency. So, guys, everything that I have highlighted is what you should have in the box. Okay? Now we're moving on. Wow, the next box, education. So let's fill this out. Athens' democracy depended on having good citizens. Athenians believed that producing good citizens was the main purpose of education. So, producing good citizens was the purpose of education. Since only boys grew up to be citizens, we learned about that in government. The girls were educated quite differently. So, boys and girls did not have the same. All right. So education meant physically training as well as book learning. So they developed their bodies and their minds. When they were ages 6 and 7, the boys were taught at home and by their moms. And then the males, when they turned 6 to 14, they went to school. So those are key things. Here's another one that I had read earlier. Books were rare and very expensive, so subjects were read out loud to the whole group, and boys had to memorize everything. Imagine if we still did that today. To help them learn, they used writing tablets, and coaches taught sports such as wrestling. All right, let's jump down. Now, unlike boys, most girls did not learn to read or write. Girls grew up helping their mothers around the house. Once again, guys, everything that I have highlighted is what you should have in your box. Okay? All right. Oh, and then right here it also says girls usually married around what age? 15. So pretty young. All right, last box. Now, this section, it doesn't say social structure, but we know that it is when it talks about women and slaves. So this is kind of giving us the class system. So, as you've read already, only men were considered citizens in Athens. Women and slaves were not. As a result, they were far fewer rights than free men did. Athenian women could not inherit their own property. They could not vote or attend the assembly. Most could not even choose their own husbands. So, this tells us that they could not vote, they couldn't own property, and they couldn't choose their own husbands. So that tells you they were in a lower class. Few women even had jobs. Some women sold goods. A few very important women were priestesses, but most Athenian women had their greatest influence in the home. So women had their greatest influence in the home. And then I'm jumping down to the next paragraph. There were also many slaves in ancient Athens. Most people who weren't poor owned at least one slave. So in this section, guys, you should have women didn't have equal rights as men. They took care of the home. They could not vote. They couldn't own property, nor could they choose their own husband. Then, in this section, you should also have there was many slaves in Athens. And slaves did a lot of the work that nobody else wanted to do. We should be now done with all 4 boxes for Athens. Now, if we scroll down the article, now look, Sparta. All right. So now it says we're jumping back up to government, and we're going to do top down about Sparta. It reads right here, Sparta was different from Athens in almost every way, beginning with its government. While Athens was a democracy, Sparta was an oligarchy. All right, Sparta was an oligarchy. What's an oligarchy? It says, in an oligarchy, the ruling power is in the hands of few people. So, right away, that tells us they are not a democracy. The power for this government is in the hands of only a few people, whereas in Athens, it was held by a lot of people. That's the biggest difference right there. It says, like Athens, Sparta had an assembly, but the important decisions were really made by a much smaller group called the Council of Elders. So they do have a Council of Elders that was a small group. And that's all I'd have filled into that box, guys. That's the biggest takeaway. All right, moving down, going down to the economy. While the Athenian economy depended on trade that we just learned, Sparta's economy relied on farming and conquering other people. So instead of trading and having this money system, these people were much more fierce. They relied on farming, and to get more lands, they conquered people, so they went to war. So Sparta didn't have enough land to feed all its people, so Spartans took the land they needed from their neighbors, because Spartan men spent their lives as warriors. All right. So that's the biggest thing I would have in the economy too, right here. That, and when I read this paragraph too, I pre-read this all before you guys, so that's why I know what I'm talking about. In general, though, the Spartans discouraged trade. Why would they discourage trade? Well, it says the Spartans feared that contact with other city-states would lead to new ideas. So, and trading with Spartan also was difficult because of its system of money. They didn't really have money. So I'd have those in there. And we should be done with the economy. Scrolling down. Education. All right. In Sparta, the purpose of education was to produce men and women who could protect the city-state. If a baby did not appear healthy and strong, it might be left to die on a hillside. Spartans valued discipline and strength. So, the purpose of their education was to produce men and women who could protect the city-state. All right, from the ages 7, all the Spartan children were trained to fight. So you can tell right away, they're not all about the books and memorizing things. They're all about, let's get them lean and mean and be in the army. So remember the Spartans as warriors, all right? And that's all I'd have in that box, guys. There's a bunch more supporting details, but these are the big takeaways that you want in there, okay, to get that credit. All right, last box, social structure. Women and slaves in Sparta. Spartan women lived the same simple life as Spartan men. All right, well, that's something different because in Athens, women didn't have the same life. But here it says that women did. They wore plain clothing with little decoration. They did not wear jewelry or use cosmetics. Like Spartan men, women were expected to be strong and healthy and ready to fight. A woman was expected to look after her husband's property in times of war. All right. So this is all different because the Athens girls couldn't do any of this. So she also had to guard against invaders and revolt from slaves. So these women are a whole lot more involved than the women in Athens. And Spartan women had many rights. There you go. They were free to speak with their husband's friends. They could own and control their own property. And they could even marry another man if their first husband had been away at war too long. Look at this. I mean, it's almost completely different. And Spartan slaves, the Helots, were people who had been conquered by the Spartans. So they also did have slaves. So the takeaway here in this box is women had a lot more rights and slaves were common, but typically the slaves were people that were conquered from the other lands. So those are all the things you guys should have in your boxes, okay? Put all the highlighted things. I'm going to share this document with you so you can see it. Reach out to me if you have any questions, okay? So I'm coming back here and we are all set.